Welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Arsenault. On this episode, we have Anathea Fenton, Principal at Falkbuilt Halifax Branch and President of DCI Nova Scotia. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Atlanta Construction Podcast. Very happy to have with us today Anathea Fenton. She is the President of DCI, Design and Construction Institute of Nova Scotia, and also the Principal of Falkbuilt Halifax office. Thanks for being here, Anathea.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Very happy to have you. And maybe we can start with DCI and just sort of a little background about what it is and what it is in the community and its goals and what it's been like for you guys the last year or so with all of our unique situation.
You mean that pandemic that's still going on?
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yes. DCI, as you said, the Design and Construction Institute of Nova Scotia, is entering its 50th year of service to the industry, which is a great milestone that we are celebrating this year. So we do have a 50th Jubilee campaign, and we can talk a little bit about that. But DCI was started 50 years ago, and if you ask me who started it, I can't tell you.
Does anyone know?
Yeah, I'm not sure that. I'm sure there are a few folks out there who do. But it was really born of the idea of having various disciplines and sectors in the design and construction industry coming together and working towards issues of common cause and having one voice. So rather than having silos of the builders having their association, the architects, the engineers, interior designers, DCI was founded to promote partnership, collaboration, advocacy, and education for all sectors of the design and construction industry.
Right. So you have players everywhere from architects and engineers, developers, contractors. Those make up your members, though.
They do. So if you look at our current board right now, we have representation of all of those disciplines on our board, as well as suppliers, owners, representatives, I'm sure, and institutions as well. So government representation and some higher ed representation.
And so one of your missions is to, like you said, you kind of partner with other associations. You're partner with CANS and a few other associations like that? Or how does that work?
So we have, I would call it an informal partnership. It's where we want to collaborate with other industry organizations to promote successes, to promote industry events, what each other's doing, and then again to come together on issues of common cause. So, for example, about 5 years ago, CANS, the Construction Association of Nova Scotia, the Nova Scotia Construction Sector Council, and DCI partnered on a procurement forum day. So there were over 125 attendees from all aspects of the industry in a full day workshop to talk about procurement, public procurement. And, what were the common issues? What were the things of common concern that we could then go back as one voice to government and say, hey, right. We've got some things we want to talk about and work with you on to improve.
Yeah. I think I've been to a few DCI events, but one in particular I remember was at a hotel in Dartmouth where I think it was Straub speaking about building envelopes, and those events that you guys put on are so informative, like so educational. The speakers are, amazingly talented, also, tons of experience and just expertise, and those events are so great for the community.
Yeah, so the education day that we did with John Straub is a great example where building envelope design is something that affects the engineers, the architects who are designing the structures and shells, as well as the contractors who have to build them. So looking at it through a common lens, hearing some of the same questions, and trying to find an approach that not only can be designed, but is functional in the end, serves our membership well.
Right. So during, the last 12 months or so when things have been much different. Maybe just talk a little bit about sort of how DCI sort of responded to that. I know I've seen a few virtual seminars online that you guys have done, and maybe give you a time to kind of step back and have some time to do some things together for moving forward in the coming years.
Yes, so very early in lockdown and early pandemic days, when we were all trying to get a grasp and get our hands around what this meant in terms of how it affected our industry, we hosted several online forums with government, with other business leaders. One, for example, was just how are you managing? How are you dealing with your staff? Trying to share best practices so that we could all get through it together, and then trying to gather information about what to expect moving forward and some of the technical aspects of how to keep our workers and our population safe.
Right.
But we also, given that we couldn't do a lot of our in-person events, which is something that we are known for, both our social events and our educational events, we took the opportunity to really work hard on our strategic plan objectives that we had worked through last year. We just completed a strategic planning initiative, and one of the things that came out of it was to expand membership. So DCI had been, the membership consisted of existing board members and all of the past board members,
right,
but not open to the industry, and that was something that we really wanted to change and,
right,
and open it up. So we're in the process of building that membership model, and we hope to have it rolled out Q2 this year.
Nice. So
Yes.
how many members would DCI have now? Like 100?
Roughly, yeah, probably 80 to 100.
Right. And current board members, 10 or 12, something like that?
So, no, we have 19 current board members as well as 3 members at large. Folks who have already served but want to stay on because they believe in the mission and values and are great supporters of DCI.
Right. So the big goal is to get some traction and gain more members in the coming years. So for anyone listening now who's interested in DCI or has heard of it or is maybe just hearing about it for the first time and thinks that it would be beneficial for them to be involved, they can find you guys online or reach out. And
They can. So we have our website. We also are on Twitter and Instagram. Those are probably the 3 best places to reach out to us. It's DCI-NovaScotia.ca or...
right. Is there a fee to become a member or?
Yes, there will be, and those are some of the things that we're, finalizing as part of our
okay, right,
our membership model.
right. So yeah, I know you mentioned the Jubilee Celebration. Maybe we can just finish out the portion on DCI with what that looks like and when that'll be. And
so we really want to celebrate our 50th year, but also be forward-looking. What do the next 5, 10, 20 years look like? So we have a Jubilee campaign that will also be rolling out. It's also a sustainability campaign of sorts. We really want to sustain the mission and values of DCI moving forward. So you'll see a number of campaign initiatives in the coming months. We're aiming for Q4, assuming all the vaccinations and everything goes well, and we continue to outperform the rest of the world, I think, right now in our health here.
Yeah.
We are looking to have an education day in Q4 as well as our annual awards dinner. So that will be a much bigger event to celebrate our 50th anniversary.
Oh, it's definitely a silver lining,
Yes.
light at the end of the tunnel for sure. So I think moving on to our next topic, which is the other thing that takes up most of your time, being the principal of Falkbuilt Halifax's office. This is a really cool company, amazing product. It's very contemporary, and I know that I can't explain it near as well as you. So maybe you can just give us a little background about sort of how that transpired with you being involved. And I know Falkbuilt is quite new to the area, so yeah.
Well, Falkbuilt is headquartered in Calgary, Alberta, It's a 2-year-old company delivering digitized components for interior construction. And really what that means is pre-manufacturing or off-site manufacturing of interior wall assemblies, millwork, and electrical systems. I have worked on and off for the founder of Falkbuilt for most of my career. So,
And that's where the name comes from, right?
What, Falkbuilt?
Yeah. Is it because was it his name or is it a Danish name or something?
It's his mother's family name.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So I know you guys have some pretty comical, good humor in the website about
Well, you can't just have
employees are Falkers.
Yes.
It's just a shout out for Meet the Parents.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have fun Meet the Falker T-shirts.
Yeah, really neat.
But the value proposition for Falkbuilt is delivering interior construction faster, as improving schedules with cost certainty and an environmental sustainability component.
Right. And just so we can maybe break this down, so the components for this interior partition wall system, it's like precision cut studs, comes with a track, and digitized horizontals. Am I saying all that right?
You're doing great. Yes.
And then there's a pre-finished cladding that finishes off the partition.
So at Falkbuilt, we're not inventing anything, we're innovating everything. So it's really, when you look at the super studs, the design idea came from racking, industrial racking. So if you go into an IKEA or a Home Depot, it's slotted and you can move the shelves up or down, right, based on that slot pattern. So these super studs are super because they're really strong, but they can support not only the horizontals, which give it some structural capability, but all of the cladding. When you layer those three components together to form the wall assembly, you don't need backing to hang millwork. It just becomes a very strong system standing on its own. But the speed for which it was built, far exceeds what you can do when you're mobilizing a lot of raw materials, bringing them to site, cutting on site, dumping all of the waste material. That's just a very inefficient process. If you think about it, conventional drywall walls are one of the few things in an interior build-out that are actually built from scratch on site. Your ceiling systems are all pre-engineered, pre-manufactured, floor tiles, even mechanical ductwork and other electrical systems can be all modular in some form or another. Right. So designing for disassembly is a term that's often used. And what that means is that you can take all of these things apart and bring them back to their individual components. It makes it easy to reconfigure. But more importantly, for a wall assembly, you have access to all of the building infrastructure that is in most need of change. Your technology, your electrical. And in hospitals and healthcare, med gases and other components that need frequent inspection. Why would you bury it in something that you can't get into without cutting and then making a lot of mess and disruption?
Right. And so you mentioned the time to install, which also touches on the horizontals, and these are between each vertical stud within the system, and it has an electrical component. So that's built. The electrical is built while you're assembling the partition.
Exactly. So the super studs are 48 inches on center. So you don't need them every 16 inches. You need fewer of them, which is part of the speed component of the install. And then the digital horizontals come with the duplex receptacles and boxes pre-mounted and wired. So all you have to do is connect to a junction box in the ceiling, or it can be plug and play to a zone box.
Right. So if you're a GC, you're thinking, I need less subs on site.
Exactly.
And if you're an installer, you're thinking, I don't have to mark out the tracks. I don't have to lay out that way. Although it's still, like you said, the very same labor procedure where it's like 2 tracks and a stud that goes in between with a...
Right. And then it's really about eliminating, having a finished cladding eliminates the paint. the mudding, the sanding, the taping,
dust.
the paint, the dust.
Cleanup. There's no cleanup. It's more cleanable, the surface.
Exactly. And much more durable. I mean, drywall is paint over paper over chalk. It doesn't stand up well to high traffic environments where a 3/4 inch MDF with a 3D laminate over it can withstand years of high impact environments like hospitals or schools.
Right. And it's also designed for other rough ends like plumbing. There's
Yes.
protrusions in the studs, and so they can be used for washroom partitions as well. And
Yes, and we're, Falkbuilt is continually innovating, and certainly fire-rated partitions are something that we'll be
right.
hopefully introducing in the coming years.
Yeah, and so what about the actual partition without adding a bad insulation, which you can if you choose to, but it has a sound rating high enough just with the initial assembly, right?
Exactly, and that's usually one of the concerns about using a pre-manufactured wall is that there's a perception that acoustic integrity is going to be lost. This exceeds drywall in terms of its SDC
So what part
rating.
of the assembly is the sound rating? Like what component is it? Just is it the cladding that goes on that has a sound rating to it as well, or?
The cladding does, but it's how you seal the system.
Okay.
Sound will find a path of least resistance, just like water does.
Right.
If there's a place for it to go, it will. So it's how you seal at the ceiling, at the perimeter, and then between the cladding and the studs themselves.
Right. So those sound waves there's no areas for those to pass through.
Well, it's, I'm not, if you have a really, really loud talker, it just depends on who's screaming on the other side of the wall.
Depends, yeah. So where's it being used? This Falkbuilt partition product. What sorts of projects is it being used on? What opportunities are in the local market? And
so there's really a pretty broad base for application, which is great because it opens up so much more opportunity to talk to builders, architects, and owners. But some examples, we now have one project in Antarctica at a research center. Falkbuilt is also doing a project in the Arctic Circle, so really from the top of the globe to the bottom. Healthcare is an incredibly important sector for us. We see a lot of growth, particularly in our Middle East markets, with hospital rooms, exam rooms, clinics, retail applications, industrial applications, commercial offices. There's really almost an unlimited palette in terms of design. So it's about, what do you want it to look like? How do you want it to function? And we design to those and build to those requirements.
And so your head office of Falkbuilt is in Calgary, Alberta, is that correct?
Yes.
And then so the reach is global, basically, for your product and for its, yeah.
It is. Right now there are over 100 independently owned branches, like mine in Halifax, all over North America, as well as India and the Middle East.
Right. So is it part of the plan is it being spec'd by architects that is allowing you for growth, or is there other ways to have your product used on whether it be commercial or industrial or healthcare?
Well, we find typically when you're talking to the owner, like the end user who's going to actually occupy that space, they are often the ones driving the decision. But we're certainly seeing a lot of uptake with general contractors across North America because this is solving a number of their challenges that they're seeing on site, which is lack of available trades. We're losing more trades than are coming into the industry, and certainly here in Nova Scotia, that's going to become very critical over the coming years with all of the infrastructure projects and housing development that's going on. There's been a lot of disruption to the supply chain. This is Canadian made. It's shipping across Canada, so it's a very reliable supply chain. In the 2 years that Falkbuilt has been in the market, they have not had a price increase and don't foresee any. I recently worked on a project where we were able to kind of assure the GC team that there would not be more than a 5% increase over the next 3 years.
That's pretty positive compared to wood and steel and some other items that we all know about.
Exactly. So there's a certainty around this type of approach, both in schedule and cost of the materials.
Right. So maybe we can touch on sort of the other side of Falkbuilt, which is sort of a Revit add-on called Ecodome. I'm going to let you explain that because
it's Ecodome.
Right.
Yeah,
Ecodome.
Ecodome. And it's a great, as you said, kind of like an add-on layer to make it simple, where we work with the build team's Revit model. So we want something that we want to be working in the same software platform that everybody else is. Mm-hmm. And so there's nothing that has to be translated back and forth. But what we can do is take that Revit model, bring it into Ecodome, which is a cloud-based technology. And the project team members can meet up in the dome and make real-time decisions about their project in the dome. So they can be meeting just by downloading the app to a phone, a tablet, or the desktop, and can do a virtual walk of the space, change finishes, change layouts, and it really helps the project team collaborate easily instead of turning pages and trying to visualize things and, looking at a symbol for an outlet on a drawing. What if you can just stand there and see it in the wall, but you're doing it virtually?
Right.
So it really enhances and enables that upfront design collaboration.
Right. And so it has the avatars that you can walk through the space, and
you pick a hat.
And away you go.
Away you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I said, it could be your team members that are in the same city, or it could be somebody from anywhere in the world.
Right.
All coming in together at the same time.
Right.
You really needed stable internet connection, but other than that, yeah.
And it's cloud storage, so you can use an iPhone or an iPad.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to have the software downloaded, like the Ecodome software or Revit for that matter. You just need to have the app.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so with the prefab material, is Ecodome sort of used to gain measurements and things for prefabbing stuff, and then it goes to site? Is it used in that sense as well, or is it just for the actual construction stage?
It's more, right now we're using it mostly in the upfront design stage, but there is an AI component to it where it will help inform manufacturing, among other things. But no, it's not taking measurements at this stage.
Okay, right. It's
just using the model that's already built.
That's very neat. So I know you have a virtual factory tour coming up. I know you're not sure of the date yet, but we can tag the date and with the episode here, and maybe you just want to talk a little about that for the listeners.
Sure. We offer virtual factory tours because we can't, unfortunately, invite our guests to tour Calgary in person just yet, but that is something for next year we hope to get back to doing. In the meantime, we can book an hour for our client teams or for any interested groups that would like to see the factory, see our solutions in action, and also meet the founders. We have an incredible group of dedicated Falkers whose sole purpose is to create an exceptional client experience. So we really welcome people to visit us any way they can. So right now that's virtually, and it's a great opportunity to meet the folks and see our solutions.
Great. I also wanted to mention an award that Falkbuilt won with a competition put on by Oxford Properties, a Canadian developer. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
That was last fall, I believe.
Okay.
And so there was a design competition in Toronto where several pre-manufactured vendors competed, and Falk was successful and have done several projects as a result of that one.
Right. Yeah, I think on the website it mentioned a project where you guys had to relocate 6 offices and build 6 more, and this and so.
Exactly. So there's the initial build, and there's certainly a compelling value proposition with, we've already talked about that, with building it in the first place, but then what happens afterwards?
Right.
And what are the downstream operational savings? How easy is it to move?
What does that look like?
repurpose?
What does it look like to have to go back into a Falkbuilt partition job and sort of disassemble and restructure the floor plan of the office?
Well, and that's the beauty of it. It's that as easy as it is to put in, it's just as easy to disassemble.
Right.
There's very few parts and pieces. You have to really evaluate where you're putting it next, because components are manufactured to fit a specific environment. So ceiling height, for example, you can't take 8-footers and put them in a 10-foot ceiling environment as easily, but there are some ways of achieving that.
Right. So we talked about some of the pros of using the Falkbuilt partition product with speed of install, cost effective, a cleanable surface, and those kind of things. What are some of the challenges that you're facing right now?
So the biggest challenge that we have found, and I have found in my 20 plus years of experience, is that there's always the mindset of this is the way we've always done things, and a hesitancy to try something different. Everybody always wants to know, well, who else has done it first? Right. So the real tipping point, and I think where the market is changing, are some of the things that we talked about earlier. There just aren't enough people to build everything that needs to be built in the time frame that we have set out here in Nova Scotia with our healthcare infrastructure projects, as well as, you're looking at anywhere from 50 to 100,000 people coming into the city over the next decade. That's going to create a huge demand for housing that hasn't even been built yet. So right now, general contractors seem to be on the leading edge of trying to find more efficient ways of doing things. What we really need, though, by the time they get the package, the tender package or design package, is that it's almost too late to insert these solutions into the mix.
Right.
Because you're not just simply swapping out a drywall wall for a Falkbuilt wall. You really have to look at the whole process.
Yeah.
So it is a collaborative approach that needs to be looked at and adopted early by the owners and the architects.
Right.
And they have to look at not just, is this the way I've always designed things?
Yeah.
But how is this going to get built? And that's where that, collaboration piece is so important.
Right. So who's your competition?
The biggest competition is conventional construction. I mean, so that's where
Conventional versus contemporary. Trying to teach an old dog new tricks.
Exactly. And that's what why I think the approach that Falkbuilt is taking is so smart. It's because it's very much aligned with that process instead of working against it. That being said, there are certainly a number of companies out there who are doing pre-manufactured wall solutions. So whether it's just glazing systems or solid walls, the market is definitely growing, but it is a small drop in the bucket compared to what the conventional market share is right now. So I think there's room for a lot of innovation and a lot of great solutions.
Right. Do you want to touch a little bit on the sustainability side and how the product is more sustainable to be used?
Yes, that's a great question, and thank you, because it's something I'm really passionate about. When you design materials and solutions for disassembly, it means that there's a number of benefits, but one, they can be in use longer, so it's a more durable and resilient system in the first place. At the factory level, On the procurement side, they're looking for ways to minimize waste altogether. There's much less debris and waste cutoff on site, so fewer dumpster pulls. Conventional construction generates 30 to 40% of our landfill waste. Because we perpetually build, demolish, and we're seeing a lot of that in Halifax right now.
I think that goes back to when you mentioned, like, it's not as simple as, like, we're swapping out this kind of wall assembly with ours. It's like, okay, yeah, we're eliminating the waste, we're eliminating dust and mess on site, we're eliminating subtrades because our walls have electrical built in, and just so on and so forth. And it's so much more than just like, what's the cost per square foot, or
exactly,
not the fact that the installation is a third of the time for your product, but even that is not really where it stops. There's much more big picture thinking to it.
And if you tear out a drywall wall, you can't do that without destroying the base material components, right? Yeah. So you're pretty much having to dump all of that, where this becomes a system that can be easily disassembled. Even if it's not going to be reused again, it's much easier to dispose of it because you can separate out the studs from the cladding, the insulation quite easily. Yeah. Not that we ever hope to be in a landfill, but if that is the worst case scenario, then there's recycle options as well as ease of.
Yeah, and you mentioned like opening up the walls, which is such a big deal whenever you're in construction and you're in some kind of renovation, or to get to that point where you have to open up walls is always something you want to try and avoid. But with your product, it's like there's no problem. It's just like a grid and tile, acoustic ceiling tile, or the.
Well, exactly. I mean, drywall ceilings evolved into a grid and tile system because you had to get at the infrastructure that was access, up there. Yeah. Why would you not take the same approach for your walls? And in healthcare, it's all the more critical because the downtime for taking a room or an entire floor offline because you've got a leak somewhere, or they've got to change the acuity level of a room because we now have to convert our labor and delivery rooms into ICUs because of a pandemic, for example. There are, and maybe that's not the perfect example, but our hospital systems can't afford, nor can our patients not afford to be in the rooms when they need to be in it. So if you can take a tile off and be in and out in 10 minutes, you don't need the same level of hoarding and, taking the rooms offline.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to ask, what's your goal sort of for sort of the Halifax branch of Falkbuilt in the near future, and sort of what are some of the things that you're doing to try and to generate some growth for this product being used in Atlantic Canada?
So right now I'm just focused on getting out and sharing the story, and letting people know that Falkbuilt is in business in Halifax. So that's my primary focus. With that is, growing the business, growing the team, generating some projects. And I think there's a tremendous market opportunity here for it. It's not easy to decide that you kind of quit what you've done for the last 15 years and start something new in the middle of a pandemic. But I think it just goes to show. And
you were always in the construction field as well. You mentioned that you grew up in a family where your dad and brother in contracting, and so what, before Falkbuilt, what were you involved with? How did that sort of transpire?
So I've been in the pre-manufactured construction, industry for the last 20 plus years. I started when I moved to Calgary, like many people did in the 90s, from the East Coast to the West. And I started working for SMED International, which was one of the leaders in modular wall solutions in North America. Spent almost 10 years in the Pittsburgh market and surrounding states, kind of growing a market there for dirt environmental solutions before joining Falk.
Nice. So people who are interested in Falkbuilt that might be listening from the local market or Atlantic, Canada, or anywhere for that matter, if they want to get in touch with you or find out more about the product and more about your plans for the local growth, how can they get in touch with you?
So Falkbuilt is, the website is falkbuilt.com. I have a local branch. You can find my local branch on that website
Right.
and contact information, and that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, it's a very cool product, and it's very, very interesting. And I really wish you the best of luck with the growth here. I
Thank
think you're
you.
right. It's a great market, and I'm sure sooner or later you'll be able to get through those tough spots and talk some people into trying something new.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of interest already, so I'm very excited, and I'm very optimistic.
That's great. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for doing this. It's been a pleasure. And us at the Atlantic Construction Podcast team just want to thank you for your time and thank you for doing this.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been great, and enjoyed sharing about DCI as well, so thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Atlantic Construction Podcast. Be sure to follow us on any podcast platform you use. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at Atlantic Construction Podcast. Be sure to send us a comment or a review. We'd love to engage with you.